All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Joe from McManusDesign, and I'm excited to be back here with you guys to bring you another tutorial on how to make a jersey swap. It's been over a year since I made the last one, and I wanted to update it with some new techniques that I've learned over the past year to help you guys out if you want to get started or learn some more about doing a jersey swap. So let's get started. I've already got the cutout here. I'm going to be doing Justin Fields to the Bears, who drafted him recently. Um, and I've already, like I said, I already cut this out, and I'm going to go from there. So what I'm first going to do is duplicate the cutout layer that I have with the layer mask there, and I like to just name it jersey because the first part here is going to be working on the jersey. And then what I'm going to do is take the pen tool and I'm going to go around the entire jersey like this and then cut that out. I'm going to speed this part up and I'll be back with you once I do that. Alright, now that we've got the pen tool surrounding the jersey, cutting out the sleeves and the neck area, you're just going to right click somewhere on the canvas with the pen tool, hit make selection. You don't have to feather it. If you want to, you can do one or two and it'll just smooth up the edge a little bit, but I'm going to keep it at 0. This will create a selection. The next thing you want to do is use the keyboard shortcut Shift Command and I to invert this selection, and then you just have to hit the delete key or the backspace key to erase the parts of the layer mask outside of this selection for the jersey. So if you look at this, now we just have a cutout of the jersey, none of the other stuff, and that's going to help because we're going to isolate this jersey layer and we're going to be working here for all of the things that we need to add on the jersey and remove on the jersey. It's not going to interfere with any of the other parts. So the first thing that I like to do is get rid of any of the insignia or anything that's on the jersey that we're going to have to remove at any point. So like this Nike logo, I'm just going to select it with the polygonal lasso, and then content aware fill. It does a good job of that for these little things. And I'm just going to do that for all of these smaller marks. Alright, so I got rid of all those things. I'm going to leave the shoulder stripes and the number on here for now because we might need those later, or we're just going to cover up the shoulder stripes with the shoulders for the bears, and then we won't need to remove the entire thing, just the pieces that stick out. The next thing that I like to do is recolor the jersey. Obviously, we're going to have to go from this Ohio State red to this bear's blue sort of color. I've already selected some pictures that I'm going to use throughout this process. And I'm going to grab the color from this one of Mitchell Trubisky. So what I'm going to do is move this down a little bit so I can see most of the jersey. And then I'm going to come to this jersey layer again, create a gradient map adjustment layer, and I'm going to hold Option in between this layer and the jersey layer to clip it so it only applies to this jersey layer with the layer mask. Then I'm going to click on this area of the gradient for the gradient map. I start on the left side, which is going to be the darker side, so all the darker colors on the original jersey are going to start with whatever color I select for this side of the gradient. So I'm going to select a darker portion of the jersey. Then I'm going to go make a point in the middle just by clicking underneath, select the color again, and I'm going to pick something a little bit more towards the middle, like that. Say OK. Then I'm going to move over to the right side and pick one of the brighter colors on there. Sometimes it's even better to make this almost white, because what we're going to do now is add another point in between these at 75% and make that bright also, and then add another one at 25% in between here that's darker than the middle one and lighter than the one on the far left. So this is what we have. Obviously there's not a lot of detail in this, which is a little bit of a problem. So what I'm going to do is just sort of move around these points a little bit to try and get some of that detail back and create the right sort of tone on the jersey that I'm looking for. Actually with red is one of the more difficult colors to perform this technique with, because red, you don't see as many varying shades as you do with a color like blue or red, so it can be difficult to get these dark parts to come out and the light parts to show up as well. So it takes a little bit of manipulation. I'm just going to get close, and then I'm going to probably do some adjustments using the curves layers or levels layers as well. I might have to do some manual shadows in addition to that. Alright, so I think I have a decent color for now. Again, we can always come back and adjust this if necessary, but I think I like the tone that we have here. I actually think I did get the shadows pretty good for now. I'm not gonna mess with any of that yet. I might add some highlights into the creases later, but for now we're gonna start here, and this is where I would add the number first. So I have this picture again of Trubisky with a decent picture of the 1, even though it's cut off a little bit at the bottom. That's something that we can easily fix. What I'm gonna do is again go around it with the polygonal lasso tool as closely as possible. It doesn't have to be incredibly precise, but you want it to be pretty close. Alright, so now once we have that selected, I'm going to use the shortcut. Make sure you're on the image layer. I'm going to use the shortcut Command J to make a duplicate of this 1. There we go, that's on a separate layer. I'm going to put it on top of this gradient map layer, and again clip it to that jersey layer, and then I'm going to move it into position where I think that it should be. So I think just about there is pretty much where we're going to be. So obviously this looks a little flat right now. First, what I'm going to do is use the puppet warp tool to try and get some of the general angles right to make the bottom especially line up with the angle that I'm looking for, and add that crease here, the major crease where the padding shows. And I'm just going to continually adjust that until I'm happy with the perspective of this. I'm going to actually do a little perspective warping here by holding Command on the transform menu. The transform shortcut is Command T, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that, but that is of course good to know. So now I'm going to fix this missing corner simply by selecting the clone stamp tool over here, holding Option and selecting a source area. Then I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller and brush in this corner here. And it doesn't have to be perfect because this is such a minute detail that nobody's going to see completely when they're looking at it on Instagram or Twitter. But that is all we needed to do to fix that. Now what I'm going to do is remove the rest of this original number here by selecting the jersey layer on this side, not on the layer mask. You got to make sure you're clicked on this thumbnail here. Again, we're using that clone stamp tool, and I'm just going to select the source over here and just brush in to remove that number and get the jersey texture behind it. And if you need to, what you can do is add another blank layer by hitting this button here above the gradient map, and you can just hold Option on the brush tool to select the colors from here, and then you can brush in over some areas that you missed or need to clean up from the clone stamping process. Something useful is to turn down the flow of the brush. That way you can make less defined lines and clean up those edges a little bit. Alright, now that we have that part done, we need to add a little bit of shading on the number to get these creases a little bit. If there's more intense creases, I will show you what you would do. You would go to this filter menu, select liquify, and then you can look at the layer behind this number layer that we need to warp. I'm going to turn up the opacity a little bit, and then you would go in here and you can use the liquify tool to sort of bend it and warp it a little bit more precisely so that you can get those little creases. It's not as important with this flat number that we have here, but on a number that has a lot of creases or folds in the jersey, it's super important to work with that liquify tool and sort of make the creases match up, because just doing shadows on the flat creases, it doesn't usually come out with a great result. So here we go on to the shadowing. For a white and orange number like this, I'm probably just going to use a black brush here, turn it down to about like 10 or 12%, keep the flow at maybe 45 or so, I'm going to hold Command and click on this thumbnail to select the number layer. And then I'm going to go here and follow these creases just to add a little bit of the shadow that should be there. Alright, so I think that came out pretty nice. So I think we're good on the number here. So now we are going to move on to the shoulder stripes from the Bears uniforms. And here is the picture that I'm going to be using to do that. I see we have a little bit of an obstruction here with the chin strap, but I'll show you how to get past that as well. It's important that the angle matches up more so than having any small obstructions like that, so this pick is going to work fine. So what I'm going to do is just go around it with the pen tool. This definitely doesn't have to be very precise. You just need to have the entire stripe selected. I'll even include the finger and the chin strap there. Make sure you're on the picture layer again. Command J, and we're going to move that on top of all the other stuff we've been working on so far. Now what I'm going to do is move it generally in the direction that it needs to be. So somewhere around here. And then I'm going to be able to take edit and transform and the warp tool. And you're going to be able to warp this picture to fit more so with the angles of the new jersey rather than the jersey from the original image. You just want to get that sort of following the creases and the stitching on the shoulder just to ensure the right size. So there we go. We have the stripes pretty much where they need to be. I'm gonna again go to that liquify tool just to clean up this this bottom part of the stripes, and I'm just going to work this a little bit to get those more aligned with how the jersey creased in this original image. Alright, now that we have that, we can focus on removing these obstructions that we had here. The first thing that I usually try when doing something like this is doing a content aware fill, just to see how it looks. Of course, that's the easiest thing to do, so why not try it? And that I can work with. So what I'm going to do again is take that clone stamp tool, select from around here, and I'm going to fill in just that little gap that it left there with the orange and the white. And again, I think I'll take the brush tool and sort of clean up these little imperfections that it left. I'm going to turn that up to 100 again, and there we go. I'll be erasing this part later, so that doesn't have to be perfect. And now for this part, I'm just going to use the brush tool since it's such a small area, and just select the colors from around it and use those to blend this in a little bit better so that it looks like the blue and we get rid of that obstruction with the glove. Alright, so there we go. The positioning on these stripes looks pretty good to me. Now, of course, it doesn't look like it's blended in yet, but that shouldn't be a problem. I'm going to take an eraser with a soft brush up here and sort of get rid of the hard edge, of course. That's where we're going to start to blend this together. So I'm just going to go over this edge of the stripe layer and remove that hard edge, and then we're going to adjust everything from there. I'm even going to take out this part underneath because then I won't need to change the color later. Of course, there's a little bit of poking out here. What I'm going to do is go back to the jersey layer with that clone stamp tool and remove that part as well, and anything else that sticks out. So it looks a little better, but it still doesn't quite look perfect. So what I'm going to do is add another blank layer above the gradient map layer, and I'm going to select from this stripe layer to get these colors of the edge, keep my flow and the opacity a little bit lower, and I'm just going to blend it a little bit closer so we match up with the stripe layer and the jersey layer a little bit better. And then we're going to go from there. For a part like this, I would actually color over the stripe layer with a color from the jersey since it's a lot lighter. So I'm just going to take that low opacity, lower flow brush and sort of blend this part together here so it matches up with the jersey where that connects. And same as with this part, even though we have a little bit of shadow here, I'm just going to lightly brush this part so it blends a little bit better. And I'm going to actually get rid of this shadow a little bit too. But there we go. That stripe looks pretty good now. It looks blended pretty well. I think maybe a little bit more on this underlying layer to get the brightness of this part right. But other than that, I think that came out pretty well. And we'll move on to the other side, which should be a lot easier because not as much of it is showing. And there's no obstructions on this side really. Just a little bit of the chin strap, but that's okay. Alright, again I have that clipped to the jersey layer that we made earlier with the layer mask. And now I'm just going to place this sort of in position and begin warping once again to get this to match up with the curvature of this shoulder on the original picture. And we want the Nike to show a little bit. There we go. And the same process, we're just going to get rid of this hard edge in this blue part that we don't need, and erase the hard edge here. And I'm going to go into that liquify filter to fix this part on the seam. Again, you want to show the jersey layer there probably. Liquify is actually broken right now, so normally you would be able to see all of the underlying layers at once, but it's not working properly, so this is what I'll have to do. But anyway, same process. You just want to line that up with the seam as much as possible, and you can use this to adjust these parts as well to line it up as closely as you can. Alright, there we go. And again, we want to, I'll put this under the other brush layer. I'm just going to brush in lightly this part to make it blend a little bit closer. And get rid of anything that is obstructing there. There we go. Looks pretty good. And there's a few more things to do on the jersey here. Next up, we're going to do the shoulder numbers, which again, we can get them from this picture of Kevin White. I'm just going to use the pen tool here. You could use the polygonal lasso tool if you want. You're just going to select these numbers and put them on there too. So just in general, placing that somewhat where I think it needs to be. And then I'm going to use this puppet warp tool here to get the little contours of the shoulder and move it even closer to where I want it. And then I'm going to take the warp tool to just add that curvature a little bit and flatten it so that it looks like it's on the top of the shoulder and it's not like flat. There we go. And that should be good. I don't think we need any lighting adjustments on this side. So I'm going to move on to the other shoulder. Same process. Just going to cut it out from here, move it over there, and make any adjustments that I think are necessary. Alright, again, I don't think there are any lighting adjustments necessary on here, so we're good to move on. The only remaining thing I think would be the NFL patch on the collar here. So I think this picture again has a nice patch for us to work with. So I'm just going to select the entire triangle here just to give myself a good starting point for the sizing and shape. So I'm going to select that, Command J, duplicate it, and bring it down to where we've been working. Transform that into place here. Try and match up the size and the angles as much as possible. And there we go. The color is a little bit off from where we are and the angle is, so I'm going to adjust that angle just a little bit to try and get this as close as possible to what it should look like. And then I'm going to erase that hard edge from our masking to blend it a little bit more. And then the last thing I'm going to do for something like this is, again, Command to select that underlying layer. I'm going to make a new layer, set it to color, And then I'm going to take the pen tool, select a color like this, and just brush in a little bit here to get that color close to the same as our color of the base jersey. Alright, and there we go. That is the jersey part of this tutorial, and I will be moving on to the pants and the accessories in the next part. So thank you for watching this part, and I hope you will join me for the next part.